You may recall in my previous video earlier this year where I explored the numbers including savings, payback and ROI based on several install options including solar only, battery only and both together. This was based on our household electricity consumption and also our tariff rates. The tariff rates have increased since then, and rerunning some of these numbers has seen an increase in the savings and reduction in payback time. But what did I end up going for, and who with, and why? In this video I'm going to take you through some of the different elements of our install, including solar, battery and its location, the inverter and a few extra bits we added to complement our existing 2015 solar system. I'll also cover how many quotes we got, why I didn't go with the others, and how much we paid in the end. Our installer was Darren and his team from IVoltz based in Doncaster, and whilst they've not sponsored this video and all the views here are my own, they have very kindly offered a bonus to both you and the channel if you go on to have an installation with them. More on this and why we specifically chose and waited for IVoltz later. If you want to skip to a specific section in the video, that's fine. I've added the relevant timestamps in the video description box below. Just to say, I'm a homeowner, not an installer, and therefore the rationale will be based on our household specific circumstances. And you may not agree with everything we've decided to do, but hopefully you'll find our experience with installing solar and a battery useful. I'll include some top 5 tips at the end and how you can use a tablet to create an easy motion sensor display for the GivEnergy app. So without further ado, let's get into it. So, starting with solar, we already had 2.85 kilowatt potential of solar installed in 2015 on our detached garage, which benefited from the old feed-in tariff or FIT. This came to an end in April 2019 and is unfortunately not available anymore. It was a really good deal, and even better if you had the foresight to install solar when the FIT first became available, despite the higher install costs. If I could turn back time, I would definitely install more solar and fill both the main house roof and the garage roof, but such is life. After looking at the numbers, and the likelihood will be in the same house over the next 20 years, and solar installations currently benefiting from 0% VAT, I've decided to add another 5.46 to our existing 2.85 kilowatt potential, taking us to a total of 8.31 kilowatt potential. That 5.46 kilowatt potential is made up of 14 390 watt Trina Vertex S all black solar panels. These come with a 15-year defect and 25-year performance warranty. Our roof spaces are south-southwest facing, and using my current array's data to estimate my expected quarterly generation potential, you can see that I arrive at the following numbers. If you're at the stage where you're thinking about installing solar and looking for some guidance of how much you might be generating, you can check out this website and enter some of the details to find out this information. I'll drop this link in the video description box below so you can check it out for yourselves. Installing an additional solar array also provides some protection from off-peak tariff price rises and, although unlikely, them disappearing altogether. Just to illustrate this point, I'm currently with Octopus Energy on their Go Faster tariff, and the off-peak prices have increased from 4.5p per kilowatt hour in 2020 to 12p per kilowatt hour in 2022. In fact, the Go Faster variant of the Go tariff, which allows customers to access earlier off-peak rates, no longer exists, and Octopus Energy now lists in their terms and conditions that Octopus Go is designed for customers who either own or long-term lease a battery electric vehicle or plug-in hybrid vehicle that they'll be charging at home. So if you've got the idea of topping up your home battery system and using this during the day without an electric vehicle of sorts, you won't be able to. There are of course the environmental benefits of solar, and one of the main reasons I invested in solar back in 2015. The kilogram of CO2 emission intensity of solar derived from both its operational emissions and the emissions generated during its construction is 0.058 kilograms per kilowatt hour. In comparison, electricity produced from gas is around 0.5 kilograms per kilowatt hour, i.e. 10 times worse. Just to note, exporting our excess electricity from our new solar array will now need to be under the Smart Export Guarantee, or SEG, and your installer, like IVoltz do, will need to have MCS certification or the equivalent. MCS is an industry-led and nationally recognised quality assurance scheme helping to safeguard high standards in the industry. Moving on to the battery. If you've watched my Is It Worth It For You video, you know adding a battery to my existing solar array is something I've been umming and ahhing about for the last few years. With battery prices generally coming down compared to what they were when we first had our solar installed in 2015, and where electricity prices have gone, it was definitely worth looking at again. Looking at our energy consumption data in the 24-hour period, it was clear on average we use around 8 kilowatt hours of electricity during the day at peak rates, and the same again off peak. When choosing our battery size, I wanted to get a battery with enough usable capacity to cover the majority of our peak time use, but also a system which could later be expanded should my energy needs change. I'd initially looked at the 8.2 kWh GivEnergy battery, but then found out they were releasing a 9.5 kWh battery in the summer of 2022, so wanted to hold out for that. However, whilst waiting for that 9.5 kWh battery to become available, I started looking at our peak energy use in a bit more detail. We have an ensuite bathroom and shower room, which has a 9 kW electric shower in it. Both my wife and I use this for approximately 10 minutes each, consuming around 3 kWh per day. We're still on a good fixed gas tariff of just over 3p per kilowatt hour, and so we've been using another shower in the house which is fed off our hot water tank instead. In doing so, we've reduced our peak electricity use by 3 kilowatt hours and instead used the hot water in our cylinder, which we would have been heating up anyway. This has taken our peak electricity use down to around 5 to 6 kilowatt hours, and I made the decision to reduce the battery size down to 8.2 kilowatt hours again. This should be more than enough for our peak electricity needs, and like the 9.5 has 100% depth of discharge. It also stands more of a chance of being topped up fully by solar even in the depths of winter. This 8.2 kWh battery comes with a 10-year defect and performance warranty and represents better value for money per kilowatt hour compared to the 9.5 kWh battery. You'll notice I've not taken into account our off-peak usage. This is because it consists mainly of things that we can shift easily into those cheaper times, for example charging our electric car, running our dishwasher, bread maker, etc. With regards to where the battery will be installed, we had a few options: in our detached garage, on the outside of the house, or in the loft. Ideally it would have gone in the garage with the rest of the existing solar equipment, but this would have involved digging a trench from the main house to the garage to upgrade the cabling, adding a few £100s on. The other issue for us is that we often put our car and other items in storage in the garage over winter, and I didn't want to reduce that capacity. Although IP65 rated and can be installed externally, I wasn't keen on installing such an expensive bit of kit on the outside of my house, exposed to the elements and prying eyes. To illustrate this point, the owners with externally installed battery systems have been complaining of slow charging or no charging at all in the near or sub-zero temperatures we had in December 2022. So that left installing it in the loft. I did initially have some reservations about this too, mainly concerns about overheating in the summer. However, after chatting it through with IVoltz and seeing several other people who have had their batteries installed in the loft over a few years, without issue I was soon reassured. The operation temperatures on GivEnergy's technical sheet also suggest an operational temperature of between 0 to 45 degrees. Furthermore, we have a large, well ventilated loft space, and the solar panels on the roof should provide some shelter from the sun. I have asked IVoltz to add a main circuit fire alarm in the loft for some added peace of mind. Just a note, so that our feed-in tariff is preserved, the battery IVoltz have installed is AC coupled, meaning that the energy is stored on the grid side, after the inverter has converted it from DC to AC and our generation meter has recorded it. This means completely legitimately we can store the electricity generated from both the old and new solar arrays and keep the feed-in tariff payments from the 2015 solar array.
Allowing me to have my cake and eat it.
We did, on Darren's advice, confirm that EDF, our FIT provider, was aware of the new installation, and they confirmed that this would not affect our FIT payments, so long as the new solar panels were installed with a new generation meter and new meter point administration number, or MPAN, which they are. Moving on to the inverters, a 3.6 kW Solis inverter will convert the direct current DC electricity captured by our new solar array into alternating current AC to supply the house first. Another 3 kW AC coupled GivEnergy inverter will then suck up any excess AC electricity not used by the house and convert it back to DC electricity to be stored in the battery. As part of our agreement for our feed-in tariff, the existing solar array's 3 kW Solex inverter will need to remain unchanged. So that's the equipment, but what does it mean for our house in terms of what we can use and when? During the day when both solar arrays are generating at their full potential, the house could consume 6.53 kilowatts of electricity. That's 2.85 kilowatt from the existing solar and 3.68 kilowatts from the new solar array. Add in the battery's 3 kilowatt and the house could consume a total of 9.53 kilowatts. Not even our power showers consume that much. Of course, it seldom happens that we get everything lining up completely, but you get the idea. But what about exporting? There are no limitations up to 3.68 kilowatts by the DNO or distribution network operator. Above this, we would have needed DNO approval under a G99 application. Our DNO is Northern Power Grid, and unfortunately they seem to charge several hundreds of pounds for the application and can take a few months to provide an answer. Not that I'm bitter. The fees charged and the time taken for an outcome seems to vary widely between DNOs. A larger inverter would have resulted in a difference of around £700 for us, for the DNO and equipment, and after working through the numbers I didn't think this was worth it, and we proceeded under a G98, which was all completed by IVoltz prior to the install. Our main aim is to self-consume the majority of the solar that we produce, whether that's by using it as it's generated during the day by charging our home or car battery, but also our hot water. Unfortunately, our 20-year-old hot water cylinder doesn't currently have an immersion fitted, but I'm going to upgrade it to utilise the excess solar energy early next year. I plan to do this without installing an expensive solar diverter like the Eddy or Solar iBoost, and if you want to find out how I get on, subscribe to the channel so you get notified when that video lands. During the depths of winter, and with the unlikely worst case scenario of having no solar generation at all, the battery would be able to charge and discharge at a maximum of 3 kilowatts. I was initially concerned that during these times, if we had a high consuming appliance on, for example the oven, and then fancied a cup of tea, turning on the kettle would take us over the 3 kilowatts the battery would be able to supply, without drawing from the grid. However, after looking at our figures in a bit more detail, this seldom happens, and when it does, it only lasts for a few minutes. Like with the other habit changes which come from having solar and being more conscious of our energy use, I'm sure we'll be able to stagger these times. And even if we can't, the draw from the grid will be minimal. One of the extra things we wanted to have added in was a surge protector to cover the new solar array and battery, the existing solar array and the entire house. For those of you who may think this is overkill, I'll say from experience that it isn't. A couple of years after we had our original solar array installed following some thunderstorms, we appear to have had a power surge which wrecked our house alarm, router, but also sadly our solar panel inverter. Luckily the inverter was under warranty and the original installing company replaced it without any fuss. At the time of making this video, it's hard to avoid concerns about electricity supplies this winter, with increasing demand and the threat of Russia cutting supplies to the EU. There are even rumours of homeowners facing winter power cuts for up to 3 hours at a time in the worst case scenarios, although this seemed unlikely. Unbeknown to me initially, a feature which isn't standard on most solar and battery installs is the ability to continue to use the solar and battery in the event of a power cut. A solar panel and battery system will not automatically provide an emergency electricity supply in the case of a power cut. By law, a standard home solar panel system is required to be disconnected from the network in the event of a power failure, for the safety of those working on the grid. An EPS system gets around this. An EPS or emergency power supply would allow any circuit in the house to be powered back up as the full board would be re-energized. These are usually limited to low consuming circuits, and we are limited to 2.4 kilowatt backup power. We would still have to flick the manual changeover switch and consciously turn off any high loads such as ovens, hobs, electric showers and heating. It would however allow food to be stored safely in our fridge and freezer, and given that I'm doing more work from home, losing power would directly affect my income. And if you're self-employed like me, you'll know that if you don't work, you don't get paid. In the beginning, when I knew I wanted to add more solar and a battery system, I went about getting at least 3 or 4 quotes. I spoke to 3 installers in the northeast, as ideally I wanted to go local, including the companies that installed my solar only system in 2015 and my car charging point in 2017, and I had a good idea of what I wanted in terms of solar and make and size of the battery. One installer suggested I couldn't store the electricity generated by my existing solar array whilst claiming the fit, even with an AC battery. Another, after discussing my requirements, suggested they didn't want to send me any further details via email, and to this day I'm still not quite sure why. I found these installers or sales reps I spoke to only wanted to push the systems that they wanted to sell or had kit for, and were often rushed, not really answering my questions. I became aware of IVoltz after a few members of a UK solar and battery Facebook group mentioned that they had a system installed recently by them and were really pleased with the install. I messaged one of those members who had identified themselves as living in the northeast of England, and they only had good things to say about IVoltz, their install, and that they cover most of the areas in the UK. Thanks again, Andrew. I did a bit of my own research, and once I was satisfied, I rang IVoltz and actually got through to Darren himself. Unlike the other installers I spoke to, he didn't rush me, answer my questions, and was able to give me some further information, including prices after taking some details, which was followed up with a more detailed quote. I never felt that I was getting a sales pitch or that I was being pushed into spending more money on a bigger system that I didn't need. Like when I asked about bird proofing, Darren asked whether we'd had any issues with birds in our current array, and when I said no, he suggested we were unlikely to need it then. Like I said, never oversold. We spoke a couple more times on the phone as I had more questions as we went on, and each time he answered these with patience, including when he came out to do the site survey. At the time of agreement, our system with 5.46 kilowatt potential of solar and an 8.2 kilowatt hour battery came in at £9,935, including 0% VAT. This included some of the aforementioned additional work, including a wired fire alarm for £110 and surge protector for the entire property for £160. The EPS was added after the initial quote and cost an additional £590, taking our total to £10,525. Though some of the other quotes we received were of a similar amount or more, we were really impressed with Darren's knowledge, patience in answering questions, and attention to detail, which carried through into the installation. An example of this was them grinding down the back of the roof tile for it to fit flush over the roof anchor. Unlike the number of posts I've seen where this hasn't been done and it's led to cracked tiles or water ingress, or both. They were also very respectful of our property, taking off their shoes and leaving the spaces they'd been working in clean and tidy. As I mentioned at the beginning, IVoltz have offered a £200 referral bonus split between you and the channel if you go on to have an installation with them, and you can check out the referral code in the video description box below. And thanks to all of you and IVoltz for supporting the channel. If you're just starting on your solar and or battery journey, then I'd suggest considering these top 5 tips. Number 1. Work out your household consumption. This information can usually be obtained via your energy provider's app or online accounts, and try to understand your energy use. Once you've done that, you can use this data to estimate your daily savings, payback in years, and return on investment. And if you're struggling to work this out on your own, you can use our easy to use downloadable spreadsheet, and I'll drop a link to this in the video description box below. And thanks to those of you who have done exactly that and supported the channel. Number 2. Get at least 3 quotes. Once you've worked out whether solar and or a battery install is worth it for you, I'd suggest you get at least 3 quotes from different installers, including IVoltz, detailing what exactly they are quoting you for, so that you're not comparing apples and oranges. Number 3. Inform your insurance company. It's always a good idea to contact your insurer when you're making any significant changes to your property, and that includes adding solar panels and or a battery. We have our home insurance with eShore, and when I contacted them, they suggested that our solar panels and battery would be covered under the home buildings cover at no extra cost to us. Like with anything, it's sensible to get written confirmation of this too. Number 4. Never pay more than 25% deposit. It's important that you don't pay more than 25% of the contract price up front, and check your deposit is protected. If you go with IVoltz like I did, they will insure this deposit with HIES so that you can get your money back if they cannot deliver the equipment because they've ceased trading. What's more, paying even part of the invoice amount by credit card offers protection under Section 75 of the Consumer Credit Act 1974, where the credit card company is jointly and severally liable for any breach of contract or misrepresentation by the retailer or trader. And finally, number 5. Maximise your roof space. One of my biggest regrets for my 2015 solar panel installation is not installing as many panels as I could, but I'm not sure the same rule applies to battery storage. As I mentioned before, I've sized this to cover my peak rate use.
You can see this here when running the numbers. Increasing the battery capacity and therefore the install cost based on our household consumption drastically increases our payback period and reduces our return on investment.
Our system was fully installed and commissioned on the 10th of December 2022. I've been really impressed, and it's all working seamlessly with our existing solar panel array. The commissioning phase of the battery may make you a little bit nervous as it dumps any energy it has in it back to the grid and then initiates a full charge, typically before anyone's off-peak tariff kicks in. Even though IVoltz did let me know this was going to happen, it didn't make it easy watching. Once this was done though, the system was easy to configure and set the battery to charge during my Octopus Go Faster off-peak hours between 9:30 PM and 1:30 in the morning, as you can see on the GivEnergy app here. You can set the percentage you wish your battery to charge up to, and I've generally left this at 100% over the winter period. There have been a few days where my weather app has promised me sun the next day, and I've set this figure between 60 to 80% to limit the charge off peak, and then charge up with solar during the day to 100%. The other settings I don't tend to change really, apart from the battery reserve if I'm working from home and wanting to ensure I have enough juice in the battery should the worst happen and the EPS is needed. I have enough energy stored to power my internet and computer. It's worth noting that when using my EPS I can't have my solar switched on. The inverter doesn't like it apparently, and hence adjusting the reserve figure. As you can see, the GivEnergy app is clean and easy to follow, and it's supplemented well by the GivEnergy Cloud dashboard, which provides even more detail into the system's performance. To help me keep an eye on the system, I've mounted a tablet on the wall in the kitchen to display the GivEnergy app, which updates every 10 seconds when in home mode. I've also added the excellent Fully Kiosk browser to add motion and audio detection capability. If you've got an Amazon Fire tablet kicking about, you probably know you're restricted to the Amazon App Store. However, you can check out this video somewhere up here where I show you how you can install Google Play Store and therefore the GivEnergy app, and in fact any Android app you want, on the Amazon Fire tablet. I've chosen the kitchen to locate this tablet as it tends to be an area in the house where high consumption items are likely to be switched on, and provides some guidance for the rest of the family on making good energy choices. And for the sake of my marriage, I'll say no more. As mentioned before, there have been some issues with batteries installed outside charging slowly or not at all. However, in our loft the lowest temperature recorded was around 3 degrees on the 14th of December, and we saw no dip in performance. The summer will offer a very different challenge, and I'll certainly be keeping an eye on this. So what about the savings? Well, it's still very early days, and in the depths of winter are likely to be heavily influenced by the unpredictable solar generation. However, the main aim was to reduce our peak time consumption, and we've certainly done that. In December 2021 we used around 9.5 kilowatt hours of peak electricity per day. Since the additional solar and battery system installation, this has been reduced to around less than 1 kilowatt hour of peak electricity per day. You can also see this reflected in the price per kilowatt hour, moving from around 18p per kilowatt hour to around about 9p per kilowatt hour, as you can see in the Octopus Watch app here. Well, there we have it. We're really chuffed with our new solar panel and battery installation. If you found this video useful and think I've earned it, then please do like it and subscribe to the channel to keep up with new content we'll be uploading, including looking at the savings, lessons going forward, and how a battery gets on in the loft in the summer heat and more. If you've enjoyed this video and you're still unsure whether solar and or battery storage is worth it for you, I think you'll find this video useful to calculate your savings based on your household consumption and different install options. Thanks for watching. See you next time.